Good morning on that Thursday at 10 a.m. In the New York time, and wherever you are, welcome to You Change the World, the weekly show that we have here live this time, and sometimes it's recorded, but we're going to have a guest also next week. So this is a show that I'm trying to keep, very consistent every week. Most of the time, bringing a new subject, but there is topics that come back also because of the fact that, as you know, and I want to remind you, every single time I'm talking about something, it's a dominant topic of the coaching sessions that I have, or during the week, or in a manner of time. This is maybe a month, maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks. There is definitely a dominant topic, and whoever I coach, it's a very interesting phenomenon I want to share with you. Is that, and it's not a joke. If I have 5 clients a day or 6 clients in a day, 4 or 5 of them will bring the same topic, believe it or not, and they did not, talk to each other. It's just a very supernatural thing that is happening here. But I can tell you that one of the dominant topic is definitely difficult conversations. And this week, we are Thursday, so we have 4 days behind us, has been 98% of the cases that I had, difficult conversations. What causes the difficult conversation is of different nature, but the difficult conversation that a leader has, the person that I coach or the team that I'm coaching, and the team is usually 3, 4, sometimes 8 people that share the same goal and form an entity inside an organization. And that entity, can have issues with perception, how they are perceived, can have issues of efficiency. How do they cross-functionally communicate, or the workflow works with different other departments. And then you've got also the frictions and other different things where there is redundancies, where there is overlaps of different tasks, and confusion for lack of transparency or lack of clarity in terms of roles that people play. I pause here for a second. Did you follow me here? How sometimes it's absurd that we're going to cause confusion, we're going to cause disputes and conflicts for lack of clarity, for lack of communication. It's not always the cause of the problem, but it's most of the time the problem. And someone, a leader, who really drives the show, right? Runs the show. He runs the show to the extent, at least, that people are moved. There is reorgs. There is people who are changing jobs. There's new people joining a team. All of that because people, or one person, or a group of executive and the authority decides to do that. And then there is nothing that prepares people for it, nothing that will communicate to people how to take it and how to implement it. It will not be prepared. We won't set the stage for it. And no notification, no preparation usually brings to chaos. It has a nature of chaotic consequence. And the fact of the chaotic consequence of not being clear or not setting the stage properly is causing a lot of problems. And not only problems, but losses. And I would just put this under one generic uh, approach, which is, hey, if you would just step back for a second before you make those decisions and before you execute that decision, right? And not abruptly, but you prepare a little bit people for it, especially the leaders, the managers of those teams. And you tell them what's going on, and you tell them how it's going to happen, and how can we unfold that plan, like any plan. Why are we more serious about a business, project than we are about the HR project, which will have consequences because we are changing the organization, or we are going to have people go or people come. When it's not prepared properly, when the leader of that team is not involved in that decision to some extent, at least to the execution plan, and we're going to miss something. So I paused on that because this was not the topic of the day, but it is one of the root cause of many disputes and many difficult conversations. So where do we start with this difficult conversation that I'm trying to talk about today? First, it's avoidance. People are going to avoid it. And it's not that you are going to be kind or you're going to be generous by avoiding it. It's because you don't really like it. It's something that you do not want to have a conflict, to be in front of someone who is going to be antagonistic, for example. So the goal is to, again, have clarity, have the courage, and the humanity to allow that space, to allow that moment to occur. It's going to be difficult because there is something in there that is unclear, or because there is two people who are incompatible, because that can happen too. Personalities are not always compatible. But that's number one. Number two, why people avoid it? By fear that they're going to get hurt, that they will lose something. That conflict is always something that is very uncomfortable. I hear a lot of people who love conflicts because by having those conflicts, sometimes they expedite a solution to a problem. Then the aspect of uncertainty, and again, not being comfortable. Have to go out of your comfort zone in order to affront, right? To be in front of the challenge. But it's an emotional approach. It's an emotional drive most of the time that will kind of make you uncomfortable and make you avoid that conversation. And I have to start right there because how can we get into that space where we have an exchange and an interaction that we know is conflictual? And then there is, of course, dynamics. Dynamics, I think it's an incredible word because I think that's what I'm always trying to identify right away in a coaching session. What are the dynamics that surround you into that anything that you bring into the coaching space with us, the coaches? If you bring a case, if you bring an example, which I always encourage people to do, let's not stay always conceptual, but let's try to see, and tackle a real example. Or we prepare something together, or we play again something that we could have done better. But this thing about going out of your comfort zone and taking courage needs coaching for most of you, most of me, most of all the people that I know. And the dynamics around you, around those two people, if it's two people going into a conflict, the dynamics are crucial. Are we talking about, we call politics, that there is some intention of an agenda? An agenda is politics. I want, for example, someone specifically to be in that position, in that job position. But now I have to do all kinds of things to make sure that this person is going to be there, designated in the position officially. Many organizations want to have 3 interviews for deciding who is going to be the elected candidate. There will be also 3 campaigns to promote the job out there in LinkedIn and all the other places where job opportunities are promoted. Even they already know who they want. So again, let me clarify what I'm talking about. I've been through this a few times on both sides, the candidate and the hiring manager, or being part of the team, the management team, and be asked by my boss to do something against my will, where she or he has decided already that this person is going to get the job. But now we have to go through all the process with HR. You hear what I'm saying here, right? Maneuvering, manipulating, that's politics. And at the end of the day, right, everything will be showing that we've been doing things right, that it's been compliant, and everything's good and fair. Okay? That creates also a lot of conflicts and difficulties. So that's a dynamic. If the companies allow that, if there is this kind of thing happening around, then of course we have conflicts. Of course we have people who get frustrated. Of course we need to clarify. And until it's clarified for the minds of those people, there will be obstacles, there will be demotivation, there will be depression, there will be crisis, there will be disagreements. And you know what? The essence of conflict and the essence of difficult conversations is always that people need to communicate and listen to each other. Listen to each other's point of view, because by listening to the other one, you know what the other one is expecting. You know what the other one wants. You know, in mediation, divorce mediation, which is probably the worst kind of mediation you can get into, and it's a specialty. I have about, I don't know, 5 certifications of different kinds to be a certified mediator in divorce mediation. And don't ask me why I'm getting into the divorce mediation. It's because someone advised me to be in there. And my position has been one of the cleanest and the best, probably, as a mediator. That's a side note, but like that's also important, that if you are a mediator involved with a conflict and need to help people resolve that conflict and come to an agreement, which is really the mission of a mediator, I'm asking you a question, right? If it's divorce, right? If you're a former lawyer or an active lawyer and you are mediating, I'm asking you, are you going to bias or are you going to do this normally and neutrally? That's the first question. The second question, you've been divorced yourself and now you're a mediator in divorce. And there is a lot of that. A majority of mediators have been divorced themselves. Why? Because now they want to kind of help other people going through this very difficult process. So it's a good intention. But what they forget is that they are biased because they've been through their own kind of role of being a husband or a wife in this particular, in this particular dispute and conflict. So obviously, if you now become a mediator, who are you going to take aside, or what are you going to be biased about? Let me ask you that very natural question. So if someone hasn't been divorced, thanks God, and hasn't been, is not a lawyer and hasn't been a lawyer, which is my case, okay, I have a huge advantage over so many other mediators. So that's also another point I want to make here. It's you have to understand the dynamics and you have to understand where you're going, what the space is about. And then you designate, when you have the choice, who are the players to resolve the issue, right? So back to a difficult conversation. Now, let's go to it because I don't have the whole time in the world. And it is what you intend to obtain into a conversation with someone. What is your intention? Okay? Where are you coming from? What is needed exactly to be resolved in this case? And what is the best outcome you can imagine in your mind that you really want for this conversation to be? Yeah, I'm back to my intention. I'm back to the fact that you are the architect. You're the architect. You're the creator of the outcome. Yes, you are. Most of the time you are. Because if you have a clear intention, most of the time you will get what you want. Do you hear me? And the intention can be of many folds. One of them is how I'm going to be in that space with that person. How can I be different if I've been with this person many times over in a conflictual relationship? How can I change it for the next time I'm going to meet with this person? Because that's when I am coming in as a coach or as a mediator, is what we have to make now, we have to do differently. How do I'm going to tackle this particular conflict differently? Well, first by bringing myself differently. How I'm going to be different, not by masking or wearing a mask and be artificially someone else. No, I'm going to be authentically me, but I want to bring myself now from an angle of me that I have to analyze. What type of persona, what inside of me, on my core persona, I need to resolve this issue with this person. And I have to go backwards. I sometimes, encourage my client to think of a situation like this from the past where it was successful, where the impact was really tangible, where it was positive, where it turned it around. it shifted the whole dynamic, which was negative, conflictual, friction. A friction is a friction. That's like fire. You need to extinguish the fire. How do you come up now differently so that you inspire this other person to join you, to reach an agreement with you, to be on the same page? How do you do that? So that's where you have to spend time thinking, because getting into the conversation, that it will be difficult right there, like no buffer. You just come from one space to the next one without transition, and you are in a bad mood or you are in a good mood, but you are in the instant and in the moment someone who did not think about preparing for this moment. And I think that of anything that should be prepared, I think a difficult conversation is probably one of the occasion and the best opportunity for you to come prepared. And that kind of preparation I'm talking about here is your presence, is your impact on the person. Yeah. And even you can be the receiving person. In fact, the other one gets the key, have the keys to resolve the situation that we are conflicting about. That person owns the keys. You don't, for some reason, right? I take an example. It's very funny that comes to me because I was talking about. I was using the word keys. Is when the head of a whole plant, a manufacturing plant, had someone in the team that was the IT guy. All the codes, all the data, the database, access to information was in his hands. And he took it as a leverage, as a power. The total wrong approach, right? But also the lack of process, the lack of best practice, the lack of policy, where this person could take it as a territory and say, I own those codes and I'm not going to share them with you. I'm coaching now the head of the plant, the general manager, who is in charge of maybe 400 people and is in charge of the operation. And he has someone in his team who is the IT guy and who does not want to share, doesn't want to give the keys to his boss. And there is no backup plan. There is nothing that if he gets sick, I mean, it's the most absurd situation I'm describing. But when I was asking those questions, I said, wait a minute, I have to ask those basic questions to my client first. Do you have a process? Do you have a policy? What did you agree with? Because this person is taking an approach that I never heard before. Right? It's something totally unheard of. This guy in charge of IT is making it a territory and a power, and doesn't share the codes with you. It's absurd. It puts the company in jeopardy, in danger. I mean, the guy is feeling like he's the master of the world. Unbelievable. So how is he going to have this conversation with him? And I remember that's what we prepared, exactly that very, very point. From what angle are we going to make this person realize that it's impossible to continue that way, right? But he was owning the keys. That's what I'm thinking about it. He was owning the keys. How I'm going to get this guy to release the keys and give up and let go of something that he doesn't own in reality. He's just on the payroll. He's an employee. How can he claim ownership of those very precious and important operational, basic and fundamental tools that the guy has and is in charge of keeping, but not in charge of owning? So it's based on a total basic misunderstanding, misconception from this person. And we don't need to convince him. We need to inform him. We need to share with him the value of what he feels by mistake that he owns. And that's funny because we had to dismantle the whole thing. And then I had to coach my client on almost writing the script so that he feels comfortable in his position of a leader to get that done. You might think that it's absolutely incredible what I'm saying, how crazy, stupid, absurd this situation is, but it can get to that kind of level of absurdity. And yesterday I was coaching a lady that is in the middle of a conflict because of also something of that has not been set properly by the boss's boss, who establishes the rules and makes the basic decisions. Because of that lack of communication, that lack of process, there's two people now in conflict, and one is taking advantage over the other. And I don't know, I don't want to go to the details, but it is again the proof that there is not really a conflict. There is not really how can I say it, an impossible situation that is not solvable. It is always. That's the thing. Even in a divorce case, it's amazing. I have seen that how much for, I mean, many cases. I'm not saying all of them, but most of the cases that I dealt with, I could see always where the core disagreement was coming from. But you know what? Most of the time, you would see even a couple that have been together for 20, 30 years, and they never really understood each other. They never listened to each other. I mean, so now they're in front of a mediator, and I find sometimes it's my life opportunity, their life opportunity, for someone, a third party, an external voice that they are willing to have, because it's a volunteer process. They both designated that mediator to be there in the middle. Now that there is an agreement on something that designated me as the mediator, and they agreed on that, both of them, I have a chance here. I have an incredible privilege, maybe a huge responsibility to make sure that they are communicating with each other. So, did I give you the keys of how to handle a difficult conversation? I spoke a lot. I gave you a lot of details. And in the same time, I'm not sure I communicated to you the tips or a recipe for it. It's not necessarily one single recipe, but overall, it is three things. Not avoid it by being a kind person or by being generous, that you are going to avoid it. No, go right into it, but go prepared. Don't have any fear. Show, in fact, confidence, no uncertainty, no discomfort, all the opposite. So if I have to work on this with you, on your posture and your body language and your voice and everything that you bring with you in the room to, be in front of that person and have a conflictual or a difficult conversation, you bring yourself prepared and you create the intention like an architect creates a blueprint. That intention is clear. I want to be this way because when I was this way 2 or 3 times, I was successful. I got to my goals. I reached my goals. And I never took the time. I always dived into this space, jumped into this space without any preparation and gave it a chance to succeed. That's not working that way, especially when you want to be successful, that there will be an outcome from this conversation that will come positively and will bring the two parties together, at least on one thing, and leave the room with a positive mindset. You shift everything around. It's been always difficult with this person. That person is difficult, as a difficult character, is territorial, is working in a silo, very typical of all the things that and you are facing almost every day. How do I bring myself to have an impact on this person, a positive one, an encouraging one? How can I engage this person into making a move and a change and get to another level and bring this to the next level of communication and change it around? Or sometimes you have to get to that, set the stage also for very strong boundaries and contingencies, like saying if it's toxic, if the person is negative, very negative, really like poison in a team, gossiping, and bringing all kind of attitudes that are not acceptable. You're the leader, and sometimes you need to take that standing by saying this is not acceptable. Zero tolerance for toxicity, zero tolerance for gossip, zero tolerance for negativity. When you feel like that, my friend, you stay home. I'm not firing you. I'm not inviting you in my space and in my team as long as you bring this attitude. And that's, you can say, there's nothing against saying that, and it's not against the law. And you're not going to get this guy suing the company because you say that. It's not abuse. You have to find a very good tonality for it, a very clear position with it, and maybe come from a lot of empathy that everybody can be negative or toxic for their own issues and own problems, because it's most of the time the case. So resolve your issues. And if not resolving it, at least, be responsible for your own issues and bring them back to where it is, which is your own space. Do not bring them in my space, right? That's contingencies. That's an attitude of leadership, and that's clarity. That's why I'm saying, bottom line, this is probably the most important element and ingredients of handling a difficult conversation. After that, the emotional side of this is to create the proper boundaries so that you're not affected emotionally by by this moment you're going to have with this person, but come from your brain and your rational, and not from ego and not from power, but coming from really a human side of you, and an empathetic side of you that the person is going to feel. And that opens up the space for another type of conversation that you used to have with that person. All right, so I used the whole half hour, unbelievably, and I wanted to introduce that aspect this way, give you the example of coaching, the example of mediation, and say, well, it's always good to step back, think, prepare, and not be spontaneous about this, but be very prepared about it. And again, intentional. Your intention is the most powerful thing you can get and bring into the room to get this person that you are in conflict with in the same level, at least, of understanding, and choose even sometimes only one point of agreement that you will reach, because, excuse me, not only by logic, but by common sense. And this person usually will, if you are doing this right and we prepare properly, will bring this to a conclusion that will be positive, or will bring the next one. If you have another meeting that maybe does result, it's not resolved in one, but when you're going to go to this second one, you will be already reaching another level of communication and conversation. Thank you for your attention today, and see you next week. Next week, we'll have a guest and we'll talk about AI. So here too, we're going to talk about AI. Why not? It is a very important topic. Thank you.